This is Tony T here from TonySpicks.com with our college football pick show. This is week 12, part 3. We'll have 10 more games for you. We'll have 35 already for Saturday's card. We'll do the final 15 tomorrow night, so we'll get them all covered for you for Saturday's action by the end of Thursday night, Friday morning. For more free pick videos, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Lots of free picks on our channel for myself and all our team of cappers here at TonySpicks.com, making it a great channel to subscribe to. We go live every day, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. It is the Tony This Morning Show. The cappers join me. You guys join us in that live show. Check it out. And we also archive on our channel. So check us our live show, giving out live free picks. But the cappers join me in interacting with you guys in the chat. And then visit our site, TonySpicks.com. We are a multi-capper site showcasing top performers in our industry. Click the links to the hot gabbers, get signed to long-term passes. Top performers like Sean Higgs up there, DeAndre, Brian, Ron Crawford, and Alessandro, guys you know from our live shows as well as our YouTube videos. Latest premix here on the page with best bets more will be locked and loaded here for this card here on Thursday. Remember our promo code at Tony T at checkout will knock off that 15%. The link is in the description to get signed up. So let's get this one underway. San Jose State and Nevada for Saturday. San Jose State fell to 3-6 after a 26-16 home victory against home defeat here to Air Force. The Spartans had really good movement in the passing game and rushed for 94 yards for 5.5 yards a carry. On defense, they limited the Falcons through the air and allowed 261 yards rushing for 4.1 yards a carry. Walker Egeter, 27-42 passes for 334 yards and 2 interceptions. Nevada dropped into 1-8 with a 51-14 road defeat to Utah State. The Wolfpack had really poor pass performance and rushed for 120 yards for 3.6 yards a carry. We had on defense, they allowed 3.6 yards per rush with 377 yards passing for 10.8 yards per pass attempt. Carter Jones here, 1 of 6 passing, no yardage. Nevada has no wins against FBS opponents. The Spartans 0-2 on the road against the Mountain West here. The Spartans on the road in conference play passing for 340 yards per game, but on defense, they're allowing 318 yards passing for 8.8 yards per pass attempt. Nevada at home against the conference is putting up 6.5 points per game while surrendering 34 and 8.2 yards per pass attempt. But the Wolfpack have been competitive at Fresno State, and they held Middle Tennessee State as well competitive there. So we're going to take the points here. We'll take Nevada here plus 9.5. Iowa and USC, this one for Saturday. Iowa fell to 6-3 after an 18-16 home defeat to Oregon. The Hawkeyes were limited through the air and rushed for 101 yards for 2.3 yards a carry. On defense, they limited the Ducks' passing game, allowed 261 yards rushing for 7.3 yards per pass attempt. Mark Winowski here, 10 of 18 passing for 138 yards with an interception. USC now 7-2 after a 38-17 home victory against Northwestern. The Trojans gained 482 yards with really good work in the run and pass. On defense, they held the Wildcats to 5 yards per pass attempt and 130 yards rushing for 5 yards a carry. Jade Mavia, 24 of 33 passes for 209 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. USC 3-0 against the Big Ten at home. Iowa 2-1 on the road in conference play. Iowa on the road in conferences rushed for 5 yards per carry with 70% completion rate. They've held the Big Ten foes at 3 yards per rush with 52% completion rate and 14 points a game allowed. The Hawkeyes have covered 6 of 7. USC 2-4 the spread at home, facing a team that allows 3.25 yards per rush or fewer. We'll take here Iowa plus 7. Virginia and Duke for Saturday. Virginia now 8-2 after a 16-9 home defeat to Wake Forest. The Cavs were limited through the air and rushed for 163 yards for 5.4 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Demon Deacons to 64 passing yards with 139 rushing for 3.4 yards a carry. Chandler Morris completed 3 of 6 for 19 yards and left with a concussion. He is expected to return to practice this week. Duke 5-4 with a 37-34 road defeat to Connecticut. The Blue Devils had good movement in the passing game and rushed for 168 yards for 4.9 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed 467 yards with poor work against the run and pass. Jared Mensoff, 22 of 31 passes for 222 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Duke has gone over in 7 of 9. Virginia defense on the road is allowing a 65% completion rate. Duke at home in conference play throwing for 321 yards with 8.9 yards per pass attempt. On defense against the ACC, the Blue Devils allowing 72% completion rate, 285 yards for 9.5 yards per pass attempt. The Cavs are 4-0 to the over on the road, facing teams that average 8 yards per pass attempt or greater. Pick here, Virginia and Duke over 58.5. Georgia Tech and Boston College for Saturday. Georgia Tech now 8-1 after a 48 defeat here to 38 defeat to an NC State. The Yellow Jackets had good passive performance in the game. Rushed for 151 yards for 4.6 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed 583 yards to the Wolfpack with really poor work against the run and pass. Haynes King, 25 of 35 passes for 408 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. He rushed for 103 yards and 2 scores. Boston College now 1-9 after a 45-13 home defeat to SMU. BC moved the ball through the air and rushed for 98 yards for 2.5 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed 574 yards in the game with poor performance against the run and pass. Dylan Longren, 25 of 37 passing for 232 yards with a touchdown and a pick. BC has no wins against FBS opponents. Georgia Tech 2-1 on the road against the ACC. Georgia Tech on the road in conference play rushed for 4.4 yards a carry with great work at the quarterback position. On defense in conference play, they are allowing nearly 5 yards a carry with 315 yards passing for 8.8 yards per pass attempt. BC at home in the ACC rushed for 4 yards a carry, really getting poor work at the quarterback position. But on defense at home in conference play, they give up 38 points per game with 5.1 yards per run, 8.5 yards per pass attempt. BC was able to score in the mid-20s against UConn, Louisville, and Cal in recent games. Both teams have bad pass defense. The Eagles have gone over in 3 of 4. Georgia Tech has gone over in 4 of 6. Pick here will be Georgia Tech and Boston College to go over 59. Maryland and Illinois for Saturday. Maryland drops to 4-5 after a 35-20 road defeat to Rutgers. The Terrapins had poor passing performance and rushed for 305 yards for 10.5 yards per carry in the game. They allowed 485 yards to the Scarlet Knights by poorly defending the run and pass. Malik Washington, 15-28 passing for 98 yards with a touchdown and a pick. He rushed for 164 yards and a score. Illinois 6-3 after their 35-13 home victory against Rutgers. Final line gained 445 yards. Really good work on the ground and through the air. On defense, they limited the Scarlet Knights to 2 yards per rush with 253 yards passing here for 5.6 yards per pass attempt. Luke Altmaier, 19-31 passing for 235 yards with 4 touchdowns and a pick. Illinois 2-1 at home in the Big Ten. Maryland 1-2 on the road in conference play. The Terrapins on the road in conference are inefficient through the air, but rushing for 6.3 yards a carry. On defense in the Big Ten on the road, they surrendered 22 points per game. Illinois at home in the Big Ten getting really good play at the quarterback position and limit teams to 3 yards per rush, 6.8 yards per pass attempt. The Terrapins have gone under, in all 3 road games. Illinois has gone under in 4 of their 5 overall. The pick here will be Maryland and Illinois under 53.5. FAU and Tulane coming up here on Saturday. FAU 4-5 after their 40-21 home victory against Tulsa. The Owls really good passing performance and rushed for 109 yards for 4.2 yards a carry. On defense, they limited the Golden Hurricane through the air and allowed 196 yards rushing for 3.7 yards a carry. Kane Feldkamp, 21-29 passing for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tulane here 7-2 after a 38-32 road win at Memphis. The Green Wave had a huge pass performance and rushed for 125 yards for 3.9 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Tigers 2.3 yards per rush with 368 yards passing for 9.2 yards per pass attempt. Jake Retzloff here, 16 of 23 passing for 332 yards with 3 touchdowns. He rushed for 43 yards and a score. FAU 1-4 on the road. Tulane 2-0 at home in the AAC. FAU on the road is throwing for 316 yards per game, but get played poorly defensively, allowing 38 points a game. Tulane at home in the AAC throwing for 312 yards per game with 7.6 yards per pass attempt. Defensively at home in conference play, they're allowing 65% completion rate for 7.6 yards per pass attempt. Green Wave have gone over in 2 straight. FAU 4-0 the over on the road, facing teams that allow 250 yards passing per game or greater. Pick here FAU and Tulane over at 63.5. Memphis and East Carolina for Saturday. Memphis fell to 8-2 with a 38-32 home defeat to Tulane. The Tigers had strong passing performance and rushed for 67 yards for 2.3 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Green Wave to 3.9 yards a carry with 332 yards passing for 13.8 yards per pass attempt. Brendan Lewis has an ankle injury, questionable here. A.J. Hill saw relief in the relief work in the loss at UAB. He went in that game 13-25 for 175 yards with a touchdown and a pick. East Carolina 6-3 after a 48-22 victory at home against Charlotte. The Pirates here were inefficient through the air, but rushed for 183 yards for 4.2 yards a carry. On defense, they held the 49ers to 40 rushing yards with 284 yards passing for 7.9 yards per pass attempt. Caden Hauser, 26 of 41 passing for 224 yards with 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 26 yards and 2 scores. So Memphis has had a bad road loss at UAB, and Lewis is injured here. ECU here has won 3 straight, averaging 41 points per game or greater. The Tigers on the road in conference play, allowing 66% completion rate for 7.1 yards per pass attempt. ECU at home put up 39 points a game with 258 yards passing for 7.5 yards per pass attempt. Of course, Lewis's injury, the concern here on the Memphis side. Pick here will be East Carolina -3. New Mexico State and Tennessee for Saturday night. New Mexico State coming, actually it's afternoon. Mexico State here coming in at 3-6 after a 24-21 home defeat to Kennesaw State. The Aggies were inefficient through the air and rushed for 2 yards a carry. On defense, they allowed 208 yards rushing for 4.7 yards per carry and 7.3 yards per pass attempt in the passing game. Logan 5, 28 of 46 for 241 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Tennessee now 6-3 after a 33-27 home defeat to Oklahoma. The Vols were limited to 1.8 yards per rush and had good movement in the passing game. On defense, they limited the Sooners through the air and allowed 192 yards rushing for 5.5 yards per carry. Joey Aguilar, 29 of 45 passing for 393 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Mexico State 0-4 on the road. They rushed for 2.3 yards per carry and 48% completion rate on the road and defending poorly against the pass. Tennessee at home putting up 46 points per game with 4.7 yards per rush, 344 yards passing per game for 9.1 yards per pass attempt. New Mexico State here 1-4 the spread on the road, facing teams with a 600-750 win percentage. The Vols here 6-2 the spread at home in the non-conference. We'll take Tennessee here, lay the 39.5. North Carolina and Wake Forest for Saturday. North Carolina now 4-5 after a 20-15 home victory against Stanford. The Tar Heels had movement in the passing game and rushed for 50 yards for 1.8 yards a carry. Defensively, they held the Demon Deacons to 36 yards passing with 36 yards rushing with 284 yards passing for 7.3 yards per pass attempt. Gio Lopez in the game, 18-25 passes for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wake Forest 6-3 after a 16-9 road win at Virginia. Demon Deacons had a poor pass performance in the game and rushed for 139 yards for 3.4 yards a carry. On defense, they limited the Cavs' passing game, allowed 163 yards rushing for 5.4 yards per pass per carry. Here, Robbie Ashford in the game at 7 of 16 for 46 yards. He rushed for 57 yards. Demon Deacons 1-2 at home against the ACC with a win by 1 point against SMU. It is a 2-game win streak for the Tar Heels. They allow 3 yards per rush with 4.4 yards passed on the road against the ACC. They rush for 4.6 yards to carry it home. Demon Deacons offensively at home in conference play rushing for 3.6 yards a carry and getting inaccurate play at quarterback. The Tar Heels have covered 3 of 4. We'll take here North Carolina plus 6. Liberty and FIU for Saturday. Liberty fell to 4-5 after a 21-17 home defeat to Missouri State. The Flames were some movement here in the passing game and rushed for 202 yards for 4.7 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Bears to 1.8 yards per rush with 286 yards passing for 8.7 yards per pass attempt. Ethan Vasco, 18-35 pass for 196 yards with a pick. FIU now 4-5 after a 56-30 road win at Middle Tennessee State. The Pirates had a good passing performance and rushed for 144 yards for 3.8 yards a carry. On defense, they held the Blue Raiders to 33 yards rushing with 331 yards passing, though, for 6.1 yards per pass attempt. Kenyon Jenkins missed the game due to injury. Joe Poransky here, 17-28 passing for 257 yards with 4 touchdowns and 2 picks. He scored a rushing touchdown. At Liberty, 1-3 on the road. Here, FIU 0-2 at home against Conference USA. Liberty on the road has gotten really good quarterback play against the conference. They struggle against the run on the road in conference play, but defend the pass well. FIU defensively at home in conference, given 5 yards per rush, 251 yards pass for 9.7 yards per pass attempt. FIU 4-6 to the spread home against the conference. Pick here will be on Liberty here at -3. For more free pick videos, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Lots of free picks on our channel for myself and our team of cappers here at Tony'sPicks.com, making this a great channel to subscribe to. Hit us up with that like, that thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. And then visit our site, Tony'sPicks.com, for our best bets. Our premium plays are there. And remember, our promo code TonyT at checkout knocks off that 15%. The link's in the description to get signed up. That will do it for now. I'm Tony T, and we'll talk to you later.